Welcome, everyone. If you're just joining, we will get started in just a minute. Again, if you're just joining us, we're going to get started in just a minute. We're just letting everyone sign on. All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Multi-Sourcing Service Integrator, otherwise known as MSI. The RFO is DIR-CPO-STS-590. Before we get started, we would like to go over housekeeping rules. Can everybody please raise their hand to clarify that they can hear me? Perfect. Thank you so much. I would like to remind everyone that you can switch between your computer audio and your phone call. Everybody is muted, but I would like to remind everyone that the handout is available afterwards. Now to introduce the speakers, we have Darren Jones. He is in the Chief Procurement Office. We have Jody Erickson, the Chief Financial Office, Sally Ward, Chief Operations Office, Teresa Williamson in the Chief Procurement Office, Chris Walton, Office of the General Counsel, Marie Cohan in the Chief Experience Office. I will now turn it over to Darren.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. We will be moving quickly, but the agenda today will start with the Shared Technology Services Overview, the MSI Vision and Scope, the Request for Offer Overview, Response Submission Instructions, Evaluation Criteria, Discussion and Invitations to Negotiate, Hub Subcontracting Plan, Digital Accessibility Forms, Matters of Law and Exceptions, General Information and Submitting Questions, Conference Closing at the end. And just a quick note, we will not be fielding questions live. There are a tremendous number of people interested in this procurement, as you can see by the attendees. It's quite a crowd. All questions should be submitted after the bidders conference and to the email address attached to this RFO. So moving on. First things first, DIR is recording this conference and we'll post the recording as well as a list of conference attendees and slides as an addendum on the SBD at the RFO posting. Questions submitted after this conference will be answered via an addendum and posted to the SBD. Webinar participants may submit questions via the identified RFO box. I know that doesn't match the text. I apologize for that. And you should check the SBD frequently for updates. Next slide. To go over the Shared Technology Services Overview, we have Sally Ward. Sally?
Thanks, Darren. You can move to the next slide. What I'd like to talk about today is some of the vision and values and desired outcomes that DIR has for this model, and to try to help put into perspective the Multi-Sourcing Services Integrator, or MSI, responsibilities and role with the program itself, the Shared Technology Services Program. I certainly don't intend to read the entire RFO to you, aren't you glad? But I am going to highlight some things we want to draw your attention to. First off, our shared technology services model has 5 different components to it, with multiple vendors and multiple contracts providing services within each one. Data center services is our first one that we ever started with private cloud, public cloud, mainframe, and we added technology solution services, which is our application services, our print and mail and digitization services, and our security operations for our data center environment. We also have Texas.gov. This includes our digital assistant, the TXT. It includes all payment processing, as well as hosting apps that are processing constituent payments through Texas.gov. All of those applications are hosted in our data center services infrastructure. Managed security services provides a lot of the same kinds of security that we provide in the data center services, but to customers who are not in data center services. Plus, we also offer risk and compliance services such as security assessments, our vulnerability testing, and pen testing. A new tower we're standing up this next quarter is digital identity, that it will include our multi-factor authentication, as well as identity and access management assessments for customers. And finally, our open data portal, which many of you know is available for all constituents with all state agencies and local business. Moving on to the next slide. It's important to know what we at DIR are telling our legislative leadership as the reason they should fund our customers to buy their services through shared technology services. We focus on security, reliability, being cost effective, and being modern. And we do that by making cybersecurity and everything that we do number one. And we set a very high bar to ensure that all of our services are secure. Reliability is all about ensuring no technical debt, ensuring that our services are delivered consistently each and every time. Cost effective means being able to, as the MSI, to evaluate the services that we are providing and those demands and proposals that we are offering, and making sure that what we are providing to our customers is cost effective, given the fact that we are a very large state with many customers, and we do expect our vendor community to provide volume discount pricing, which would allow many of our very small customers to enjoy the level of cybersecurity and modern technology that they might otherwise not be able to afford. Can move to the next slide. So as a background, our services with MSI have been deployed since 2012, and they've been continuing to evolve. We've had an increase in the number of suppliers that we've included, a high increase in the number of customers, and certainly an increase in the complexity of the services that we offer. And we are experiencing tremendous growth in the areas of application development, in public cloud, and with new challenges that we're finding in information security that are happening in the marketplace, as we all know, as well as new opportunities with AI and generative AI that we want to be able to take advantage of. DIR expects that this future MSI contract and contractor will be ahead of these challenges. We are looking for solutions that will provide leadership and digitization throughout our MSI responsibilities that will continue to enable that secure, reliable, and customer-oriented services. Next slide. This is the vision that we have discerned for the MSI, and I want to draw your attention to the words at the very top. Our vision for this next RFO is to evolve from the MSI as IT service management to the MSI as providing service leadership. Small change in words, big change in meaning. We're looking for leadership over our comprehensive service evolution process, how we go about ensuring that our services that we deliver to our customers stays current with the market. As you know, we enter into contracts that can be up to 8 years in length, plus the years of transition and the RFO and all of that. We are looking forward in 9, maybe 10 years into the future. We have to make sure that whatever services are in place at commencement of each service provider's contract are able to evolve through those 8 years, and we are not stagnant with whatever was delivered on day one. Nor do we want to be have the obstacle of any good change or new service to be always a cost change order. We want the ability to continue to evolve and change without necessarily incurring additional costs. We are looking for program innovation. We're looking at improving our data model, maximizing our platforms, really pushing service automation through all of our service component providers. We are looking at service resilience. We are looking to ensure that the MSI is looking at our services to ensure both we're refreshing and we can operate regardless of the condition, regardless of whether it's a disaster or not a disaster or simply an outage. We're looking for more visibility into our data, more data that can be coalesced such that we can make better decisions and be ahead of issues. And we're looking for technology solutions that will help us do that. We are also very interested in ensuring that we have developed a culture of continuous customer experience improvements. And part of that is ensuring high-performing customer relationship operations. So the MSI provides that role as the single conduit or door for our customers to enter so that they can access shared technology services. We are not looking for a traffic cop or someone to report the news. We are looking for customer relationship operations that are helping and managing our customers' services through STS. We're also looking for modernized enterprise architecture, a new area that has been added to the scope of work for the MSI, in which we are looking for service evolution. We're looking for reference architectures, modernization, oversight of our customers' demands and our service component providers' solutioning to ensure we are modernizing, we're standardizing, and productizing. And finally, public cloud optimization is also new to the scope of work. We want to ensure that our customers are given the opportunity, all the opportunities, to optimize their costs in the public cloud. And we believe that the best way to do that is to ensure that an independent third party is overseeing public cloud consumption and costs and identifying where those costs can be reduced. The service component provider for public cloud will be required to implement those recommendations that a customer approves, but it will be up to the MSI to drive those customers to maximize their cloud savings. Next slide. So in our MSI services model, I think it's important to realize that DIR is going to set the state's technology direction. We set the service strategy. We will procure the contracts with multiple SCPs that are a part of this model. It will be the MSI's responsibility to integrate these new service component providers as they are added or removed from the operating model. And your solution needs to ensure that DIR can continue to do those types of changes on a routine basis. As you know, we cannot go out for reprocurement for all of the services that we offer all at once. No operating model would be able to sustain that. So we are going to be changing and procuring in groupings. So you can consider that every year there will be some of the service components that will be in an RFO and procurement mode, some that will be in transition. And finally, the service component providers themselves will retain, as you see in the bottom box, their responsibilities for driving requirements and design and deployment and service delivery and so forth. It's the MSI's role to oversee, report, and identify where there are problems, where things are going well, where things can be done better. Okay, next slide. There's some key areas that we are looking at, and we tried to articulate well in our scope of work. So I thought I'd bring them up here, that require leadership and technology expertise in growing amounts of need. One is public cloud integration, meaning integrating ServiceNow and our customers' access to public cloud in an automated self-service manner. That will require MSI tools capabilities and service catalog capabilities and things that will need to be provided not just at transition and commencement, but throughout the life of the contract. Cloud financial performance optimization, I've already mentioned. Enterprise data management is an area where we're expecting that tools and data will be proposed along with the leadership to evaluate and interpret that data into information that can make good decisions for the program. We've also added requirements for enhanced financial planning and analysis. We do a lot of financial planning and analysis, as many of you know, that are helping our customers get the funding that they need to consume services within shared technology services. And that has become more and more complex, and we need better solutions for providing that financial planning and analysis. We're looking for leadership over service evolution for all the service components, as well as the MSI's services that are being provided as part of this contract. We're looking for infrastructure, enterprise, architecture, a new team, new leadership that would oversee our customers' public and private cloud solutioning and demand and projects. And finally, we are looking for an evolution of our MSI platform. It's many tools. There's some key ones that I'll talk about in a couple of slides, but we are looking for consistent evolution with the market to take advantage of more and more data where possible and automation where possible. Next slide. So ServiceNow is our key, but not the only, our key technology platform, and the scope of work does require that the successful respondent assumes our current subscription. And that means our current SaaS installation with all of the customizations that have been developed to date. There are two more tools to look at that are integrated with ServiceNow. Our IT financial management tool, it's currently using Digital Fuel, which is at end of life in August of 2027. So bidders are given the opportunity to either replace the current IT financial management system during transition. So in other words, going live at commencement with a new tool, or assume the current license as is and transition to a new platform after commencement, but by August of 27. For IT service level management, we are also using a Digital Fuel tool, which also has an end of life of August of 27. And in our scope of work, we are requiring that bidders propose to replace that platform within transition by commencement. Next slide. Also wanted to draw your attention to some of the key service personnel that we are requiring as a part of this scope of work. As I mentioned before, moving from IT service management to service leadership starts with the people in those leadership positions. And we have included all of the positions in the boxes here. We expect and require a 24-month commitment minimum from contract execution. We do require that you provide us an organization chart that will show us clearly defined lines of authority and accountability for all the management aspects of this contract. We need to ensure that your organization will operate without DIR directing you on a day-to-day basis. We are not requiring that each of these positions be dedicated full-time, but we do ask that you tell us what percentage of that individual will be dedicated to the MSI program. And when I say dedicated, I mean how much of their working time will they be allotted to work on Texas? In other words, they may be dedicated to Texas and dedicated to other states, but how much of their time is going to be spent and dedicated to Texas? Next slide. A couple of key points about our performance management system that I thought would be helpful for you before you finish your responses. And first of all, our performance model is comprised of two types of service level agreements, critical and key. Critical service levels are those that have financial credits attached. Key are measures that do not have financial credits attached. For the critical deliverables, the financial credits are determined and assessed at the enterprise level for all customers. However, they are reported at the customer level, which means that if we have 2730 customers, there is a reported SLA for each customer, and it could be red or green. But overall, the SLA may be green. Even though it may have missed for a particular customer, it is green at the enterprise level. Therefore, there would be no financial credit attached. However, we do require that if an agency is red, that there is a service level improvement plan that the MSI develops and creates in conjunction with that service component provider or with itself to find corrective actions to get all customers to a green level. We also include financial credit earn back opportunities. And we do this because we really don't want credits. We're not here to take more money. What we really want is the performance. So there are earn back capabilities that are part of our model that allows you to earn back the first 50% of that financial credit if the SLA is met the following 3 months. And then if the SLA is met the 3 months after that, the remaining 50% is earned back. One of the items I want to point out, and it's always a topic of discussion, is in our our performance model, we include a unilateral right to add, modify, elevate, and delete SLAs. And why do we do that? We do it because we can't have an SLA measuring everything. And we know that. But we also do expect high performance and meeting expectations for all areas of the contract. So what we don't want is a solution that focuses only on the critical deliverables to minimize financial credit potentials and forgetting the rest of the contract that is to provide good customer service and reliability, security, and so forth. The MSI will also be measured on certain SLAs with the service component providers' results. Those SLAs that are related, in other words, both an SCP and the MSI have a hand in incident resolution, for example, then the MSI will be measured on the enterprise results for incident resolution for all of our SCPs. And I've already discussed service level improvement plans, but they are critical to be making sure that our performance model works. And it is the responsibility of the MSI to develop those service level improvement plans and ensure that the right corrective actions have been identified and implemented to ensure that the performance does improve. Next slide. So, in our service integration model, the goals are to leverage the MSI as our integrator. So we have a single point of contact to our customers and seamless service delivery across all of our providers. And in order to do this, it will require all of our providers, both MSI and the service component providers, to collaborate and share operating agreements. Go to the next slide. I just wanted to highlight a few of the requirements that we put into all service component providers' contracts, as well as the MSI. We are very intentional in our requirement for collaboration and ensuring that we're doing what's right and best for our customers in the state of Texas, not just that we're meeting the terms of our own contract, regardless how that may impact those around us. So that's how we have collaboration requirements. You will be required to enter into operating agreements. You will share in service level agreements. And finally, if you are impacted by the performance of another provider in our model, you have the ability to escalate that impact to our governance to ensure that you are not financially harmed. Moving on. Governance of our shared technology services is an owner-operator model where our customers are both the owner and the operator of their services that they receive from the service component providers in STS. We expect and require our customers to actively work directly with their service providers to resolve issues at the lowest level possible that are specific to that customer. And we require our customers to participate in committees to address any enterprise matters. Go to the next slide. So we do try in our model to involve customers at all levels, from the business executive level all the way down to the technical level. We've established a representational model where we've divided our customers into partner groups. And within each of the 5 partner groups, we have agreements with our customers that they will represent each other in that partner group on the various solution groups and leadership committees that we have, so that we don't have every single customer needing to come to every single governance meeting. We have a manageable number of people that are in these governance meetings and are taking issues and solving them for the best of the program. This helps us provide that single customer voice to our vendors, as all of our service providers are also members of almost all of our governance committees. And it also drives us to make consensus-based decisions. And where we can't make consensus-based decisions, we have defined escalation paths up to our Business Executive Leadership Committee that helps us make final decisions. And if you go to the next slide, we have an overview. This is also in the RFO of the structure of our governance model. The MSI is responsible for facilitating this model as far as meetings and our calendaring and our dissemination of information and consent agendas and all sorts of helpful things like that. You'll see on each of these solution groups that there are certain contracts and certain vendors that would be involved in each of those solution groups. The IT Leadership Committee includes all of our service component providers, and it is a consensus-based decision-making committee. The Business Executive Leadership Committee, however, is they strive for consensus, Where consensus cannot be reached, the BELC is authorized to vote. Vendors are not members of the Business Executive Leadership Committee, but invited as associates depending on the topic. And that, I believe, is my overview for Shared Technology Services. We're very glad you all are here.
Hey, thanks, Sally. That was great information for everybody. This is Darren Jones. I'm the procurement lead for this RFO. Now we're going to go over the RFO itself, looking at the general RFO information, RFO contents, RFO requirements, the term of contract, and the RFO schedule. Next slide, please. Okay, general information. As stated, DIR seeks a successful respondent to serve as a Multi-Sourcing Services Integrator, or MSI, transitioning management of DIR's current MSI to the successful respondent. As a result of this RFO, DIR expects to receive and evaluate responses and select one service component provider, or SCP, for this RFO with whom to enter into a contract. The vendors and subcontractors performing the service component functions for the DCS program, Texas Public Cloud Manager, Mainframe Services, Print Mail Digitization, Technology Solution Services, Texas.gov Services, Texas.gov Payment Services, Digital Identity, Managed Security Services, as well as public cloud providers within the DCS program, such as AWS, MS, Google, OCI, are precluded from award of the contract resulting from this RFO due to the oversight functions and independence required for these functions. This is also spelled out in the RFO, and we'll have another slide later where the list is a little more clear, so it's easy to follow. I'm sure everybody knows who they are, and if you're on this list, then you should not respond. Next slide, please. Okay, the RFO contents are as follows. You have attachments. A for respondent information form, B for hub subcontracting plan, C for policy-driven adoption for accessibility, vendor self-assessment, D voluntary product accessibility template, E vendor accessibility development services information requests, respondent release of liability, and exceptions. The exhibits include statement of work with attachments, which are the service level and deliverables matrix, service level definitions, the SMM content and organization, the key personnel, and reports. Exhibit 2 is the financial provisions and pricing requirement with attachments, and they are pricing and volumes, and the financial responsibility matrix. Next slide, please. And then the RFO itself contains the master services agreement with the attachments such as definitions, insurance risk of loss, form of source code escrow, form of parent guarantee, and CJIS security addendum. Next slide. Okay, the requirements are pretty straightforward. DIR seeks a successful respondent to serve as multi-sourcing services integrator, transitioning management of DIR's current MSI to the successful respondent. Minimum qualifications are 5 or more years experience providing systems integrator services or similar MSI or SIAM, service integration and management services as stated in Exhibit 1 SOW. Held at least 3 contracts for same or similar services active within the last 5 years that have a minimum annual contract value of $15 million per contract. Assess those requirements carefully as you fill out your response. Next slide, please. The term of the contract. DIR anticipates that the term of the contract will be approximately 4 years with optional renewals of up to 4 years. So up to 4 one-year renewals. The length of this term may be adjusted as necessary to account for a period of transition services or as a stub period at the end of a fiscal year for a total anticipated contract award between 8 and 10 years to be determined prior to contract award. Next slide. And the RFO schedule. Starting today with the bidders conference. The deadline for submitting RFO questions is the 20th of December. The deadline for submitting responses is the 17th of January, both at 2 p.m. Evaluation clarification amendment process will run February through April. Due diligence integration sessions and final negotiations will run May through August. Award recommendation is targeted for August of 2025. DIR governing board authorization to award is planned for October, and the transition will be the date of the award through August 31 of 2026. As a note, DIR reserves the right to adjust and update these dates and schedule as need requires. Next slide, please. The digital data room. We have set up a digital data room to aid respondents in preparing to respond to this RFO. Respondents may request access to the digital data room once they have executed DIR's non-disclosure agreement and have completed access requests available at this location. That location is also in the RFO documents. Upon accessing the above link, prospective respondents should request access to the digital data room via the online form, download and execute the digitally signed NDA, send it to the point of contact identified in RFO section 3.1 by email, which is the dedicated email address we've created for this RFO. DIR will then make a determination and notify the prospective respondent of the decision. DIR will continue to add information to the digital data room throughout the procurement. Updates will be announced via addendum. Check the ESBD regularly to avoid missing important procurement-related information. Next slide. Response submissions. This section is going to cover the response contents, required response files, things to remember, and references. Next slide. Response contents, what you submit. Submission instructions, the 4 packages should be submitted as 4 separate .zip folders with the required files prescribed in each package included in the .zip folder. Response 1 package is administrative submission requirements. Package 2 is response to service requirements. Package 3 is service pricing. And package 4 is the hub subcontracting plan. Respondents shall respond electronically via email, providing responses in an electronic format, i.e. Word files submitted together in a zip folder at the date and time specified in section 3.3 Schedule of Events. The address is enterprise590@dir.texas.gov. Next. Now, the required response files for the administrative response package 1, you must provide the items listed below. I'm going to save us all some time and not read through every one of these. They are posted here in the presentation deck, and they are also similarly described and outlined in a table in the RFO itself. But read these carefully. Be careful to follow the naming conventions as described or shown to the right, and ensure that they are all, if you need to sign something, make sure it's signed. That's a requirement, and we don't want anyone to miss out because they forgot to sign something. Next. Response package 2 is the response to service requirements. This one's a little shorter. It has the technical solution summary, transition approach and methodology, transition project plan, respondent experience, terminated contract disclosure, proposed account organization, and exceptions. Again, make sure you follow the naming conventions as they are shown on the right, and put these all into the response package 2 zip file. Next. Response package 3 is a little more straightforward. It's a service pricing. You have attachment 2.1 pricing, and it's a Excel sheet. So definitely ensure you go through every tab and ensure that you have filled in all the areas you are required to before packaging that up. Response package 4 is the completed hub subcontracting plan. Respondent must provide at the attachment B hub subcontracting plan and complete it. Incomplete hub subcontracting plans may lead to disqualification. Next. Pricing proposal.
I think this is me, Darren.
Yes, Jody, I was about to say.
Thanks, Darren. Hello, everyone. I'm Jody Erickson, Director of Shared Services Finance. I'm going to walk you through some of the RFO pricing documents in more detail. There are 3 key RFO financial documents, including Exhibit 2.1, which are the words that explain the key financial requirements and calculation methodologies for billing and chargeback. Attachment 2.1, which is the Excel workbook that is part of the Respondents pricing submission. I'd like you to please pay close attention to the instructions in this workbook and make sure you are completing all aspects, including all of the appendices. And the final document is attachment 2.2, which is the financial responsibility matrix that identifies who pays for what services and the associated charging mechanism. If you're having trouble determining who pays for something or where to include that in your pricing, this is a great place to start. Next slide. Attachment 2.1 highlights include 5 key areas that we're going to discuss here under the respondent pricing. Assumptions, we want to make sure that you're leveraging the Q&A process to eliminate as many assumptions related to pricing in your submission prior to submitting your proposal. So please be sure, again, to get your questions in early so that we can get responses back to you so you know how to handle that and can minimize the amount of assumptions you document here. If you're unable to do that, we definitely want you to document any pricing assumption that you can't figure out, but the Q&A process is a great place to do that. Key considerations, be sure to sync your pricing closely with your technical solution and ensure the costs associated with the timing of any tool and tool replacements are accurate and complete. And additionally, be sure to include all base variable licensing costs in your fixed or variable charges as appropriate. For rate card, for any rate card services, be sure to include travel in those rates and make sure the rates that you're proposing align with the standard qualifications and experiences for those respective roles. And then next is transition. These are your non-recurring milestone charges for implementation and migration services pre and post commencement. If since the MSI is a mature tower in the STS program, we would expect most of these transition charges to be primarily related to the new tooling requirements. And then finally, volume discounts. As Sally mentioned earlier, we do want to make sure we can bring best value to all of our customers, regardless of their size. And we do expect respondents to offer discounts as the program grows, because this is a critical piece of our best value determinations. Next. The MSI cost component slide is intended to help you better understand the pricing breakdown and whether the pricing should be included or excluded from your pricing proposal. So we'll walk through a few of these components. Fixed costs. These costs are included in the respondent pricing and would be charged on a fixed monthly amount. The variable costs also included in your pricing, and these will fluctuate as the service component provider charges fluctuate, and they're detailed in your variable charge volume tab. The resource unit volume for these the services provided, such as disaster recovery resource units, we want to make sure that you've included all of this in your pricing. Transition we talked about earlier, so there's a whole tab in the workbook for transition, and we want to make sure we understand the milestones and the costs associated with those milestones as you work through your implementation and migration plans. Transformation. projects, we want to make sure that these are included so that we have all of the detail and the pricing associated with any transformation initiatives. And then your base variable software that I mentioned earlier, please be sure that your software, all software that's included in your technical solution is also included in your fixed and variable pricing as appropriate. SSC, software service charge software, is excluded. Designated MSI software procured through TPC or PCM is paid for by DIR directly and should be excluded from your pricing. And then additionally, since we have the requirement for you to leverage infrastructure within the program, any TPC or Texas private cloud or public cloud infrastructure should be excluded. And again, DIR covers those costs, and we then allocate those costs back to our customers through our chargeback methodologies. Next tab. A few other pricing topics we'd like to bring your attention to are the service charges that we talked about earlier, both the fixed and the variable. We will closely scrutinize the split of those charges between fixed or variable, and you need to make sure that those charges align with Exhibit 2 requirements and general cost accounting methodologies. And then respondents should not expect change orders as a source of additional revenue. Attachment 2.1 has several appendix tabs that I mentioned. We want to make sure you fill those out completely. They're a very important part of our evaluation process. And then finally, one more, data room. As Darren mentioned earlier, there are several important documents in the data room related to pricing. Please be sure to look at all of that historical information that we have included, including our prior MSI spend and information related to the SCP historical spend, which will help guide you when developing your variable charges and pricing. And then finally, the pricing analysis, make sure you are prepared to explain any material differences between your pricing proposal and our historical spend, because we'll need those explanations for our leadership and internal reviews as well. And I think that's my last slide.
Next slide, please. Thank you, Jody. It's excellent information for everybody to keep in mind. Now, a number of things to remember. Attachment A, the respondent information form, it must be filled out in its entirety and signed by an officer or agent empowered to contractually bind the respondent. You will be disqualified if this is not signed. Qualifications requirements. Respondent must complete Table 5 qualification requirements and provide a separate Microsoft Word document, a file entitled ABC DIR-CPO qualifications requirements.docx. Other pass-fail criteria are identified in Section 4.2.1 of the RFO. Read those carefully and follow it. Next slide, please. Okay. Additionally, Attachment CDE, PDAA, VPAT, and VADSEER. The completed PDAA is required, and a failure to provide this self-assessment may lead to disqualification. If applicable to the solicitation, the VADSEER is required for service offerings, and ACRs, completed VPATs, are required for every product offering. Attachment F is the respondent release of liability for references and terminated contracts. This form must be completed so the DIR may contact references for both experience and terminated contracts with any questions or concerns. Failure to provide this form may lead to a respondent receiving a score of 0 when the reference information is unclear. And signed addenda. Respondents are encouraged to provide a signed page 1 of each addenda posted to the ASBD for this RFO that confirms that you saw it and we're able to process the information. Next slide. Attachment G exceptions. Respondent shall note any exception using RFO Attachment G exceptions as described in the instructions worksheet therein, and return in a response as a separate MSXL document. File should be titled ABC, DIR, RFO, exceptions, and in an Excel format. References. For each reference provided, respondent shall provide assigned RFO attachment F, respondent release of liability. We recommend contacting your references in advance to let them know DIR may be contacting them. Next. Now we're going to move into the evaluation criteria. And that's, of course, the evaluation criteria and determining. Okay. 4.1 is the evaluation of responses. DIR will review responses to determine responsiveness to this RFO. All determination about responsiveness to this RFO are within DIR's sole discretion. All responses are determined to be responsive will go through a financial review overseen by the Chief Financial Officer. The financial review, here a review of financial solvency of the respondent, and completed a hub subcontracting plan is a pass-fail determination that is final. Only responses that pass will be considered for award. At any time during the evaluation process, DIR may ask any or all of the responses to elaborate on or clarify specific points or portions of their response. DIR requests and respondent's response shall be in writing. Section 4.2, pass-fail criteria. Dunn's number and report is a pass-fail review conducted by the finance group. That will be in response package 1, section 3.5.12.4, financial information. Completion and signing of the hub subcontracting plan, attachment B. Compliance with the applicable provisions of all these government codes. Respondents may fail the selection criteria for any of the following conditions: a score of less than C or legacy unsatisfactory on the vendor performance system, the vendor performance report search webpage at texassmartbuy.com, VPTS. Currently under corrective action plan through the TCPA, having repeated negative vendor performance reports, or having purchase orders that have been terminated in the previous 12 months for non-performance, including but not limited to late delivery. Next, please. Section 4.2.1, pass-fail criteria continued. Compliance with Texas Government Code 2054, Subchapter M, TAC 206, TAC 213, WC3, WCAG 2.0 AA Technical Standards as applicable. Respondents may fail this section criterion for any of the following reasons: missing or incomplete Accessibility Conformance Report, or ACR, for products listed in the itemized price sheet, missing or incomplete VADSIR for proposed development services on the itemized price sheet, or missing or blank PDAA self-assessment. As we noted earlier, ensure that you complete all forms. Must meet minimum experience qualifications as specified in 3.5.12.3 Respondent Qualifications, Table 5, Qualifications Requirements. Next. I'm moving into the evaluation criteria. These will be scored to determine the best value of the state. DIR has identified each evaluation category and associated weighting in descending order. The technical solution is worth 35%. Technical transition and service integration is 25%. Pricing is 20%. Proposed account organization, personnel experience, and quality is 15%, and experience is 5%. On the technical solution, DIR will evaluate how well the proposed solution meets or exceeds DIR's solution requirements as described in the RFO. On transition services integration, DIR will evaluate reasonableness of the respondent's proposed plan for transition, including integration. Please note, schedules will be evaluated for their reasonableness and the ability to transition successfully with limited service disruption to customers and SCPs, as well as enhanced functionality available today. Pricing information will be evaluated. To be evaluated includes evaluation of attachment 2.1 pricing. Proposed account organization, personnel experience, and quality. DIR will evaluate the respondent's organizational structure and their personnel's individual experience and quality of work. On experience, DIR will evaluate the respondent's experience providing MSI services, experience with public sector service, and projects of similar scale and complexity. Next. Now we're going to talk about discussions and invitations to negotiate, how it works, and what you need to do. Key procurement milestones are as follows. Responses are submitted. Evaluation of initial responses is completed. Discussion sessions, potential RFR01, down select based on RFR01 evaluations, due diligence and integration sessions, potential RFR02, due diligence continued, and negotiations. Please note there is no guarantee requests for revised offers will take place. Respondents should assume each time a response is submitted that it will be the last opportunity to revise the offer. Also, after response submission and evaluation, a down select may occur. Next. Discussion and integration sessions. The state, in its discretion, may hold a series of discussion sessions with respondents to ensure complete and accurate understanding of the requirements and responses to this RFO. The state, in its discretion, may also hold a series of integration sessions between select respondents, the MSI, and other DIR SCPs to align the solutions. To facilitate the sessions, the state may distribute respondents' technical solutions to the MSI and other DIR SCPs as appropriate. The purpose of the integration sessions is to identify gaps or overlaps between a respondent's solution and the solution provided by the MSI or other DIR SCPs. Respondents may be required to provide revised offers after integration sessions to correct any gaps or overlaps in the respondent's solution and price. Please note, technical solutions and other bid material will not be shared with other respondents. The RFO is intended to provide respondents with enough information to build its response, but it is the respondent's responsibility to obtain any additional information deemed necessary for the respondent to meet its obligations under the terms of this RFO. Respondents participating in discussion sessions and/or integration sessions may submit a written due diligence plan to DIR as a part of its amended response. Next. Revise offer and due diligence. Under revised offer, DIR in its discretion will make the determination whether to request oral presentations and/or engage in a revised offer process. Revised offer process, if held, may be scored. Revised offer process may be iterative. DIR may request more than one revised offer. DIR reserves the right to continue to evaluate responses until such point as the best value as defined by Texas Government Code Section 2157.003 is obtained for the state. Due diligence is an activity in which selected RFO bidders are allowed to ask more complex questions regarding DIR's needs and current state. Next. Award of contract invitations to negotiate. DIR executive management shall make the decision to award a contract if in the best interest of DIR and the state to do so. The decision of executive management on any award is final. Any award made in response to this RFO shall be posted to the SBD under requisition number RFO DIR-CPO-STS-590 upon execution of a contract. Next. Now to talk about the Hub subcontracting plan, we have Teresa Williamson. Teresa?
Thank you, Darren. Like Darren said, my name is Teresa Williamson. I am the director of the Hub program. And let's talk about the importance of submitting a completed and signed Hub subcontracting plan. Next slide. Please visit the link that's been provided for the most current approved copy of the Hub subcontracting plan, also known as an HSP. You will be required to download the HSP form and complete it. Please do not modify this document in any way. It is owned and managed by the Comptroller's Office and is an editable copy. Next slide. All respondents are required to submit a completed signed HSP. Failure to submit a completed signed HSP will result in your response being rejected, as this is a pass or fail item. There are 3 ways to complete your HSP. The first is to meet or exceed the hub goal and complete method A. The second is to not meet the hub goal and complete method B. And the third is to self-perform. Next slide. The hub goal for this RFO is 26%. If your proposed subcontracting meets or exceeds the 26% hub goal, you'll complete method A. Be sure to identify all hub and non-hub vendors that you'll be working with. Include the anticipated dollar amounts and expected percentages. So when completing method A, you'll complete sections 1, 2, 4, and method A attachment A. Next slide. If you're going to subcontract below the hub goal, you'll complete method B. Be sure to solicit a minimum of 3 hub certified companies and 2 minority trade organizations. You must allow them 7 working days to respond to you prior to the due date of this RFO. Include your outreach to these entities with your HSP submission. So you will complete sections 1, 2, 4, and then method B, attachment B. Please allow yourself plenty of time to complete the method B good faith effort. Please remember that the day that you send out your correspondence is considered day 0. I've seen many companies submit an incomplete method B good faith effort and fail the process because of it. So please give yourself plenty of time to follow through with the instructions when completing method B. The hub office will also provide you with a complimentary review of your HSP prior to the due date of this RFO. Next slide. If you will be self-performing, you will complete sections 1, 2, 3, and 4. In your self-performing justification, you'll identify how your company will fulfill a contract with its own staff, equipment, and resources. Please don't say that you'll subcontract in the future if you need to. Make your case on how you will self-perform. Next slide. My contact information is listed here. Like I said, we will provide you with a complimentary review of your HSP prior to the due date as time permits. Please contact us no later than 10 business days prior to the due date of the RFO. Take advantage of this complimentary review, and remember when corresponding with the hub office to make sure that you're copying the procurement lead on all correspondence. Next slide.
Hey. Thanks, Teresa.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Marie Cohen, our statewide digital accessibility officer.
Hey everyone, good afternoon, and thank you, Darren. I'm going to go over the digital accessibility forms for this solicitation. Next slide, please. So digital accessibility refers to the practice of designing and building technology that remove barriers for people with disabilities. In Texas, we want to make sure that our technology is accessible to all Texans. We follow the statute, Texas Government Code 2054, subchapter M. We also have rules that are in place, TAC 206 and TAC 213. And we follow industry best practices through the World Wide Web Consortium, WCAG 2.1 AA, which is the technical standards for technology. DOJ just announced this new WCAG standard, so we are in the process of transitioning over, which is why I went ahead and just put the new standard in there. Next slide, please. So I'm going to go over 3 documents that make up the digital accessibility packet. The first one is the policy-driven adoption for accessibility. This is a vendor self-assessment of the organization that is responding. So the vendor that is responding, this is regarding your accessibility maturity, not the product, not the service. I'll also go over the vendor accessibility development services information request for development services, and then the accessibility conformance report, which is also known as a VPAT. It is a completed VPAT, and that is for all of your product offerings. Next slide, please. So the policy-driven adoption for accessibility is in your packet. It is a spreadsheet, and you will complete the spreadsheet that has been provided for you. It is an assessment of your company's accessibility maturity. So where are you at within your organization, in your business practices, with accessibility in mind? The form that you were given requires a score of 0, 1, 2, or 3. Please do not put X's in those boxes. It will not tally the score at the bottom. If you submit a spreadsheet that has a score of 0, it will be a failing score. If you do not submit the PDAA with your response, it could potentially disqualify the response. This is actually a good document for the organization to see where they're at on the accessibility maturity matrix, and it can be used as a roadmap to help implement new accessibility practices within your organization. Next slide, please. This is a copy of the current PDAA maturity matrix. There are 3 main areas, so the launch stage, integration stage, and optimization stage. Filling out your PDAA self-assessment will help you determine where you're at on this matrix. This is also a NASCIO-sponsored document. The PDAA is used across the United States in different procurements. Next slide, please. The Accessibility Conformance Report, or ACR, is a completed VPAT. The VPAT is just a template that is provided for companies to test their products. Once they test their products and record how their product conformed to the different success criteria, it becomes an accessibility conformance report. And that is what we're looking for in your response. This will be for any product offerings that you submit. So anything on your pricing sheet that constitutes a product will be required to have an accessibility conformance report. For this particular solicitation, I would like to see accessibility conformance reports for the ServiceNow product that the awardee will be taking over. Please use VPAT version 2.3 or higher. And if your product is a web-based product, it will need to meet the WCAG 2.1 AA standard. Next slide, please. This is an example of the different conformance levels that your product will have to meet for each success criteria. So when your product is tested, it will either support with exceptions, not support, or it's not applicable. The only not evaluated criteria answer allowed is for anything that falls under the level AAA standards. Anything that does not fully support the success criteria will need to have an explanation on the accessibility conformance report. And there is a section to provide that explanation. Next slide, please. The vendor accessibility development services information request is for development services only. If by some chance the MSI will need to do significant customization that impacts the user interface for any of the products, they will need to complete this form. This form tells us how your developers have been trained with regard to digital accessibility, what kind of training they've received, how do they test for defects, how do they track those defects, and what kind of corrective action plans they can provide. Next slide, please. These are the questions that I just mentioned. So your business processes, skills and training resources for your development team. What kind of development and testing tools do you use? What kind of corrective actions do you have in place? How do you document, track, and resolve those issues that have come up? And then what kind of plan do you have in place for non-compliance? Next slide, please. DIR now offers training for all of our vendors. This is free. There are 4 courses. Each course will take about 45 to 60 minutes. This is bespoke training for doing business in the state of Texas. It will go through all of these different forms that I have mentioned. You're welcome to train any of your staff. And if you're interested in taking this training, please email me at statewide.accessibility@dir.texas.gov. And please copy Darren on all communications to me. Next slide, please. This concludes the digital accessibility portion. And again, if you have any questions or wish to sign up for training, my email address is statewide.accessibility@dir.texas.gov. Thank you, Darren.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chris Walton, Assistant General Counsel here at DIR. I'm going to take a few minutes to talk through some matters of law and the exception process when it comes to this RFO. In the RFO documents, you should find the Master Services Agreement, or MSA. This is the template that will be used for any awarded contract. You'll see in the MSA there will be some bracketed items. Those items will be completed prior to award. As a note, prior to contract award, DIR may make changes to the MSA. Respondents selected for negotiations will be notified of any changes. And if any changes occur prior to negotiations, those changes will be noted through an addendum to the RFO. Respondents are instructed to review the MSA and any attachments to the MSA as part of the RFO and note any exceptions to the contents with their initial response. So regarding the exceptions process, while respondents are encouraged to not request any exceptions to the MSA or any other RFO documents, we understand sometimes that may be necessary. If so, respondents must note any additional requested terms in their exceptions. Respondents must also carefully distinguish between exceptions to the contract terms versus pricing assumptions, which must be noted separately in Exhibit 2, Attachment 2.1. Any exceptions must be noted in RFO Attachment G, and if there are no exceptions, the respondent must explicitly state that it takes no exceptions. DIR will consider any exceptions submitted in determining best value for the state. However, DIR will accept, reject, or negotiate exceptions in its sole discretion. Any individual exception or combination of exceptions or prolonged negotiations due to exceptions may result in a respondent being removed from consideration. As a reminder, well, exceptions that are not submitted with the initial response shall not be considered and cannot be submitted later on during the process. A reminder about the designated contacts for this procurement: vendors, any vendor representatives, any potential subcontractors must not attempt to discuss the contents of this RFO with any employees or representatives of DIR other than the contacts that are designated in the RFO itself. Failure to observe this restriction may result in disqualification of any related response. When submitting a response, any respondents must use their legal name. That name must match exactly the name that is registered with the Texas Secretary of State and should not be an abbreviation or a DBA. Respondents may include a DBA in addition to the legal name if the DBA has been properly registered, but the legal name is that requirement. A DUNS number that is provided must match the legal entity's name and address that is on record with Dun & Bradstreet in order to ensure that a proper match is made. Failure to provide the correct legal name and DUNS number may lead to delays in contract award. A reminder, all information that is submitted as part of this procurement process, including any documents, emails, attachments, will be subject to Public Information Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 552. Respondents must submit a redacted and non-redacted copy of their responses if there's any confidential, proprietary, or copyrighted information that is included. Such information must be clearly marked, and any information that is not clearly marked will be released upon Public Information Act request. Information that is clearly marked will be submitted by DIR to the Office of the Attorney General to determine whether the requested information should be released in response to a Public Information Act request. And if you have any questions about whether certain information needs to be marked or not, that would be a question for your legal counsel. Make sure you follow the instructions that are in the RFO, section 3.5.9 regarding public information, which goes into this in some more detail. And with that, I believe I'll hand it back to Darren.
Okay, thanks so much, Chris. So now we're going to go over some general information and the process for submitting questions. Next slide. Okay, again, here's a clearer version of the precluded vendors list. I'm not going to read through the whole thing. However, you should scrutinize this carefully once you receive a copy of the deck after we post it and the link to the recording of this conference to the ESPD. Next. The sole point of contact regarding this RFO is myself for procurement inquiries at enterprise590@dir.texas.gov. For Texas Hub subcontracting inquiries, Teresa Williamson at dir.hub@dir.texas.gov. Questions submitted after this conference will be answered via an addendum posted to the Electronics Business Daily. Any changes or additional information regarding this RFO will be posted as an addendum to the SBD. Next. Okay, again, here's the schedule. We have the bidders conference today. The deadline for submitting RFO questions is the December 20th at 2 p.m. The deadline for submitting responses is the 17th of January at 2 p.m. The evaluation, clarification, amended responses are February through April. Due diligence integration sessions and final negotiations are May through August. Award recommendation is August. Board authorization to award is October. Transition would be date of award through August 31st, 2026. And again, DIR reserves the right to amend and update this schedule as needed. Next. And that's it for our bidders conference today. We want to thank everybody for their time in joining us, and have a good afternoon.